Thank you so much for sharing the live. Thank you so much for being here. Hello, everyone. What are we going to talk about today? Anything happening in the world? I haven't heard anything. Are we all just fine? Just enjoying October, getting ready for Halloween, she says facetiously. I wish that's all we had to worry about these days, right? But that's just not the case. Is it? Nope, it is not. Unfortunately, it is not. You can hear me okay both on Tube of the U? It's funny how they kind of take their time here pushing me out, and I don't know what I've done to upset. Oh, I know what the problem is. For some reason, I'm a little wonky. And so I tried to move, and I tried to move the mic with me, and that's when we lost sound. So hopefully you can hear me okay. I don't want to touch it. Yeah, joyful Robin. The world is indeed on fire, but we cannot be paralyzed into non-action. Who's joining here who knows anything about what's happening with the Purple Revolution? I'm just now starting to hear about that. Hi, Fix Today. How are things in New Zealand? What time is it there? Hi, W's. Good to see you over on YT. Glad you're here. Yeah, I just heard Tabitha Speaks Politics was on this morning, and I heard her talking about it. I don't know a lot about it. I'm hoping someone who can come in and say something about it so we can learn. I'm getting mixed vibes on what this is. I don't know if it's just moderates coming together or what. When I think purple, I think red and blue make purple. So is that it? That's what I'm assuming it's about. But I don't know much about it. Come on in. Glad you're all joining us today. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop them. I'm going to try to get... I've heard more about UT from Palestinians. UT, I'm not sure what that is. I'm sorry. It's an acronym. Hi, Kathy. 6:51 a.m. in New Zealand. Wednesday, right? Yeah, you're already into Wednesday. Government is still in shutdown. Well, yeah, and it's hard. How are they negotiating when there's none of the sitting congressmen are in the House? So House chambers. So how is anybody negotiating anything right now? It is the purple thing. Not sure. And again, if you're looking for talking points, when you hear all these ridiculous things that the Democrats and the Democratic Party caused this, remember that Republicans control the House, they control the Senate, and they control the White House. So, and if they wanted to, they could end the filibuster. Whatever they want to do, they absolutely could do it. They're just trying to spin this into a way so it's off of it's all for optics, and it ain't working very good. The only people who are buying it so far, hi Heather, it's so good to see you, is Fox News and probably Newsmax. Maybe they could meet Trump on the golf course. Yeah, I haven't seen much about him. I did not, usually before I try to come live, I look at the news. And that isn't, Sophia, I think is your name. Yeah, the air traffic controllers aren't getting paid. The military is not getting paid. Juanito, I'm here in Indiana as well. But it's interesting that the Congress people are, and that's on us. We should not have tolerated that kind of inconsistency when it comes to government shutdowns. Why in the world are we paying people who are responsible for the shutdown, who cannot? Yes, I'm 100% in agreement that we needed to extend the tax credit so that people can afford their health care, because without it, there's going to be like millions of people who will not be able to afford health care. So the premiums are going to go through the roof, because what's going to happen is healthy people are going to take chances and go without health insurance. That's going to leave a lot of the at risk to be insured. And every time you have that imbalance, premiums are going to go through the roof. So this is going to be really, really bad. Kim, what did Kim say? Democrats are to blame. Wake up, lady, and read what the Democrats want. Lynette, don't block her just yet. I don't blame Republicans under Obama. My health care went. No, it didn't. No, it didn't, Kim. If you can be, if you want to stay here and have a conversation, that's fine. But if you're going to continue to do that, yeah, just go ahead. No, it didn't. You are lying. You're misrepresenting the facts because you're MAGA. And you're right. You don't have any, there's nothing here for you. There's absolutely nothing here for you. What we're doing here is deconstructing from this kind of indoctrination that completely believes anything that Christian patriarchy says. So you just need to go, yeah, I know you don't think you do, but you do. You know, the most frustrating thing when it comes to dealing with people who are so die-hard MAGAs is that it's very hard to have a conversation that doesn't go to the extreme and immediately go back to something like 2008, to the time of Obama. We're talking that 17 years ago. Up to 2014 and 15, or at least 10 years ago, that's all they've got. That's all they've got. I listen to debates where they immediately start to rail on Kamala, who hasn't been the vice president now for 10 months. Because it's so easy to pick up those talking points. And this is all part of this indoctrination. If you can deflect and turn the mirror out instead of looking at how damaged this is. So when it I've written about this several times. When it comes to this hardcore Christian that's indoctrinated to support, blindly obey this side of Christian patriarchy, until they are absolutely harmed by it, or they wake up to understand that they've been deceived by it, there's no talking to them. There's no getting them to change their minds. We aren't doing anything helpful by sitting and debating somebody who wants to come into a live and say, you lie. My premiums went through the roof with Obama. Okay, so 15 years ago, lady, your premiums went through the roof. I really think that that's relevant now when we're talking about a government shutdown, and we know the facts, but that is nothing but deflection, and Christian patriarchy teaches you to be masters at it. That's part of the indoctrination. It's never about accountability. It's always about turning the mirror out and making it seem as if the person who has the most power is the victim. That is what they teach you all the time. Hold on, I know I need to get caught up with some. Maggie says, and the guy who went before appropriation committee believes $7.50 is a livable wage, needs to try it. You know, and that's another thing. Thank you, Abigail. That's the other thing about the whole $7.50. That, again, that's another thing. Like if Congress is getting paid right now to while the government is shut down, while the military is not getting paid and the air traffic controllers, those kinds of things, really, they come back on us when we should not tolerate those things. There's a people's movement, if you will, without sounding too radical, because I'm very much, whoever is going to be the representative of the Democratic Party, I'm voting for them. Even though prior to Trump, I voted the candidate. But yes, that meant I voted both years for Obama. So, but you have to also remember, I deconstructed from that very kind of Christianity where most people just blindly voted Republican because that's what you did. that was just what you were told was those traditional values. You heard those buzzwords all the time. Those traditional values were more in line with Christian values. So once you deconstruct and you really start to understand that the alignment of compassion in Christianity is more alignment with the people, when you understand that elevating the conditions, the living conditions of people, and literally, proverbially taking your foot off the neck of the oppressed is more aligned with the teachings of Jesus than anything that you were taught was traditional Christian values. I literally just wrote about this over on Substack, and it was released today, talking about how Jane Goodall's kindness actually contrasts the niceness and the cruelty of Christianity. And once you awaken to that, you understand that a lot of what you consider as being more alignment with being a compassionate person is more in line with the Democratic Party. No matter what they call you, whether they want to call you a socialist, a communist, a raging liberal, whatever they want to call you, it's always that way. How did you come back, Steve? I thought you got blocked. Even Schumer and AIPAC buddies that vote with Trump. I don't know what that means, Joe. I did too. I voted for W. Yeah, shenanigans. Hi there. I'm so glad you're here again. Sumajo, Congress needs to be paid no more than the minimum wage. There you go. I think they have to pay us when they're not in session and they're not doing their jobs. I've heard someone say that the reason that Johnson is holding out the House convening is because they have enough votes to release the Epstein files, including Republicans who want them released. So over on YT, Pamela says privilege is their stance and you can't get them to look in the mirror or learn what others go through. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm just trying to get caught up on comments as y'all come in here. Thank you so much for liking and sharing. That does show TikTok that this is a live worth staying in, so I do appreciate that. And remember, we will have a couple of people come in who will try to tell us all about their woes and how radical we are and how liberal we are and how extremist we are. And you don't have to worry about dealing with them. I always say that if somebody wants to have a respectful civil conversation and they don't agree with us, they're willing to stay. But if you notice, they come in hot. I mean, they come in hot. They want to make sure that you understand how disgusting they see us, how vile they think we are, because once again, they're turning the mirror outward instead of reflecting on themselves. Thank you, Mary. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you, Mary, for being here. Let's see what we got. Yeah, the only thing somebody mentioned about AIPAC, and I think she probably ended up getting muted. I don't know if she did or not. Why she was saying that. I can't talk about a lot of that here. You know, I'm seeing some people start to get really brave on what they can talk about to test the algorithm and the bots that are here. But I can tell you that there's just certain things I can't. Once I start going live on Substack, I'll be able to be more frank about some of those conversations, because right now it does serve, until we find out what's going to happen with this app. I have a platform that I'm reaching people that I don't have in other places. So I want to make sure I can be here for as long as I can. Depending on what happens with this app, I more than likely will not stay. Liz says the vitriol drips from Bondi and Levitt's words. Caroline Levitt is a work, but when you look at the dichotomy of what some of the Christians said about Jane Goodall. For instance, if you know who Kim Ham is the author or the creator of Answers in Genesis. He's also the creator of the Creation Museum over on the Kentucky-Ohio border. And he's a young creationist, so the Earth is only 6,000 years old. And upon Jane Goodall's passing, he did a video where he wanted to make sure that basically it was a warning to Christians to make sure that they didn't have too much compassion for her. This is what is so insidious about Christian patriarchy. They are terrified of empathy. And who was one of the biggest voices against empathy was good old Charlie Kirk. Because empathy is a threat to Christian patriarchy. Empathy is a threat to the teaching of Dominionism and manifest destiny. And Dominionism means that Christians have the right to dominate the entire world, including its inhabitants. So it doesn't matter how you treat the resources, deplete the resources, pollute the water, treat animals humanely, factory farm production be damned. It doesn't matter. Because when Jesus returns, everything's going to be restored. It's their right to do these things. So you turn off that compassion. And his position was that in one of the signs at the Cincinnati Zoo, Jane Goodall contributed to the verbiage there. And it basically was saying how important it was to understand that animals, many animals, including vertebrates and invertebrates, are sentient beings. They know fear, they know grief, they know love, they know joy. And he had to go right into the Bible and cherry pick it to make sure people like, whoa, turn that off. Because if people start to think for themselves, and for anybody who's ever deconstructed, one of the first things you realize is if you're being if you're being honest with yourself, is how cruel you were. How cruel your faith taught you to be. So that's why empathy is one of the things that terrifies Christian patriarchy. They want to be able to hold on to not only what you believe, but how you feel and how you view the world and how you view pain and suffering. They want you to look above it. Look above it. Your suffering is for the good. Whatever pain and suffering is all worth it because your eyes are on salvation. It doesn't matter what's going to happen here. Jesus will take care of this. Jesus will fix it. So Jane Goodall got attacked. And what's interesting is Jane Goodall was raised in a Christian household. And towards the end of her life, I don't know at what point she became more spiritual than religious. And what I wrote about her today, she even said there is that being in the forest, being in the jungles, she realized there has to be something. There has to be something beyond this. It's not church that taught her that. It's not the Bible. It's not the community of believers where she found that. She found it in nature. She found it in creation. And to me, that's beautiful. But boy, did they have to pounce on that immediately because, whoa, don't look too much. There's way too many things out there that are honoring her. And that terrifies them. Make sure you turn your eyes back on Jesus now, which means don't forget your tithes, don't forget your commitment to community, because even though the Bible says nothing about attending a church as a requirement to be a good Christian, they want to make sure that you attend because how else are they going to keep the lights on? So that's really a sad video. I want to grab a comment over on YT. Dobview says, did you see the pastor who preached from the altar with an AK in hand pointed at the congregation last Sunday? No, I did not. No, I did not. If you can message that video or that link, I'd like to see it. Thank you, Jelly. Let's see. How Jane Goodall's kindness reveals the cruelty of Christians. Oh, that's the name of the writing I just did over on Substack. So if you like writings, go ahead and head over there. Did you watch? Yes. So Quiet Storm says, did you watch Famous Last Words with Jane Goodall on Netflix? So I've seen clips of it. I haven't watched the entire video about that yet. But what I got from it was the place where she was talking about the infamous spaceship because she said there are people on this earth that she doesn't like. So if you haven't seen the video, there's video clips all over the place. Just put in Jane Goodall, Trump, Musk, spaceship, and you'll get it. And with her same kind, gentle voice and the way she softly speaks, she said, there are people in this earth that I don't like. And if I could, I would put them on one of Musk's spaceship, and I would send them off to the planets that Musk thinks he's going to inhabit. And someone asked, well, would you put Musk on that? She said, oh, yes, he would be the pilot. And then she would put Trump and President Xi and Putin. And I love that courage. It offered in kindness. That's why people confuse niceness with kindness. Even though there's been lots written about it, it's not talked about inside Christianity. Those lines are blurred. So especially for those of you who are deconstructing, thank you for the follow, Kathy. That's a really important conversation, because if you are deconstructing and you don't understand the difference between being a nice person and a kind person, then it's an important part of your deconstructing journey. I'm going to put that in my deconstructing intensive that's coming up very soon. I promise. It seems like there's always one more thing I have to take care of. But inside there, because niceness can wear a smile and be the most cruel person that you've ever met. It's the people who make you coffee at church but also vote against your best interest, who oppose human rights, who annihilate them, and don't have any problem sleeping at night. Kindness serves humanity, serves creation, understands that when everyone is fed, when suffering is less, we all thrive. We're all better for it. That living is not a competition. That there's enough here of humanity if we allowed it, but somehow we have equated this we are on a capitalist overload drive. And this is not me being anti-capitalist. I understand that's nothing about that system is going to change anytime soon. But it doesn't mean that we have to revert back to industrial revolution times where there were no safety codes, where there were no human rights. Go back and read about the shirt factory fire in New York City, where the workers were locked in and couldn't get out. And the reason that the legislation changed was because of the hundreds of women who died in that factory at that time. Look at the horrid conditions that people existed in because of greed. At the time when people were so ridiculously wealthy, they were given the name robber barons. And look, I understand that there are people out here who work hard and they have immense amount of wealth, but that doesn't mean that we're not responsible for people who served that industry. So yes, I think that we need to have an equitable tax base that reflects what we do to take care of the least of these. I believe that that's more in line with the teachings of Jesus, and I'm no longer Christian. So these are the kinds of conversations that we need to be having about why is it that you want to believe that someone, just because they raise their hands and praise a God that they created in their image, is the one who deserves to have the loudest voice in the room, instead of those like Jane Goodall, who also said she was more spiritual than religious because of the work. That's the kind of work that you do oftentimes will untether you from those dogmatic beliefs, because you start to see things in a different light. Thank you, Crystal, for the follow. Yeah, John, not a shocker at all, is it? Feed the poor, don't expect the government to do it for you. So, John, are you here to troll? Because if you really are, you won't stay long, honey. If you want to stay here and learn and ask questions, that's fine. But if not, you'll... Happiness, thank you so much for the follow. We'll keep going. I have to agree with the spaces list. Don't forget Stephen Miller and the vice president to that list. Oh, the spaceship list. Yeah, Stephen Miller is a really interesting... Stephen Miller is a really interesting character, and I did a lot of videos on him in 23 and 24 when I started warning people about Project 2025 and how he was the architect. But we also can't forget Kevin Roberts has kind of gone back into the background, but he's still very much, he's the one who said it will be a bloodless revolution if the left allows it to be. So Stephen Miller, if you haven't seen his speech at the Charlie Kirk propaganda rally, then you really need to go see that. Hi, Elsa. I'm so glad you're on YT. I see you over there. Thank you so much. Thank you, Views. I'm going to grab that right now as an image. Thank you. But what happened there and compare it to history, especially 1930s, you're going to see that there are a lot of similarities. How that could ever be billed as a funeral is beyond me. But does anybody have any questions? I can keep going on different things, but let's keep talking. Let's keep I know, like, oh, Queen of My Castle, thank you so much. Did you send a galaxy? Queen of My Castle, I'm sorry. Sometimes they don't come up and I don't see them. So thank you so much for the gifts. Everyone who's given gifts. Oh my goodness. Thank you. I'm just now seeing them. So I'm on my desktop and it looks totally different here. And if I get going and I always look away and let whatever's flowing. And sometimes I don't see those things. So if I don't see them, please know I appreciate them. I see all the wonderful I see you. I've got likes in here. Those help so much, and sharing the live is so good. So thank you for all of that. That does protect the live and keep things going. Wendy says, what upsets me is Trump actions to the need are very unchristian. I help others around me. Yeah. So there's a lot of things that are happening, especially when you look at what is being forewarned now as far as some of the adjustments to what's happening with disability benefits, who's going to qualify for those, if insurance steps up. One of the things that I find very concerning, and this John person was in here early saying, if you want to feed the hungry, do it. Don't expect the government to feed it. Well, you can't say something like that in a society like America. First of all, it's hypocritical. Are we a Christian nation or aren't we, John? The very people who say that we're a Christian nation are the ones who also say the government shouldn't feed the hungry. Do you see the hypocrisy that just continues to spew out of their mouths? Regardless of that, time and time again, it has been proven that a society is more thriving when it's more equitable. And equity serves the underserved, the underprivileged that has often can be attributed to oppression. And when you look at the beginning of this country through Manifest Destiny and the concept of Dominionism, and you see how many times human rights have been violated. If you want to learn more about that, read Religious Intolerance in America. I don't have it here right now, but you can certainly read it so that you can see, learn more about how religion was used to justify the unaliving of the Native Americans who were here, that are indigenous to this land, the original people. How the enslavement of Black people was all part of the initiative justified through religious beliefs. So come on. Laylee, yeah, the zip tying of the babies is absolutely horrific. And we're quickly reaching a point where there's going to have to be some significant movement that's going to have to be more, and this is not me criticizing the fact that we have protests being scheduled. I'm not criticizing that. It's just one piece of the puzzle of things that are going to have to happen. And again, I've not been here either. People will look at me and say what the plan is. I said, beyond being an educator and a minister to those who are deconstructing and helping them find their spiritual path, I've never been here before. But I'm not going to stop speaking about it. All I know is the urgency is increasing and the action isn't. So I see some more movement on not only protesting, but also some kind of striking or boycotting of things that was effective as the return of Jimmy Kimmel. So let's see what's happening here. Yeah, the Chicago raid, Becky, you can go read about it. It's pretty evident that that's what's happening. Yes, so October 18th is the next big No Kings protest, and if you don't know anything about it, I think you can go to No Kings and you can find it. Hi, chauffeur Kimberly. Thank you so much for being here. I'm glad you're here. Yeah, martial arts. Hey, how are you? It's good to see you. I'm glad you're here. So, Martial Arts of Medford says, I never thought about the connection between Dominionism and Manifest Destiny. You know, I spend so much time, hi Wendy, I spend so much time in that space that sometimes things start to click together. The farther away we get from our religious indoctrination, you just start to see how it all fits together. And it all comes back to Christian patriarchy. It all comes back to American Christian patriarchy. Yes, there's different types of Christian power control all over the world. But what's unique about American Christian patriarchy is the fact that it has justified Manifest Destiny and Dominionism to create this narrative that no matter what happens in this world, in this country, it's justified if the white Christian man remains in power. It also creates this narrative and this mindset and this prejudice against any other kind of leader. And I also think that that's what expedited the Christian nationalists, the extremist MAGA movement after Obama was elected. This was already planned. This was already going on. And if you haven't read Bad Faith, or seen the documentary, you can tell I use this book a lot. This is an important read. This is a really important read. I'm going to risk saying this one, the New Apostolic Reformation. All of this is tied together. Many of you have mentioned before the importance of watching The Family on Netflix. It's informative, but it's a little overproduced, but it is still very informative. What Bad Faith does is show you from the late 50s and the early 60s, the movement that Jerry Falwell and Paul Weyrich were behind to ignite the evangelical Christian to vote. Because they were a large block of people that were very apathetic because they did not see a connection in their needing to be involved in politics, because guess what? Where politics and the religion kind of thing. So they were kind of apathetic. They were also very comfortable in where the country was. When people talk about the good old days, they just thought it would always be that way. They never thought that civil rights would take hold. They never foresaw someone like Martin Luther King, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I always try to use his titles because that's, I think, is important. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, they never saw someone who would have that kind of power and influence. And don't forget that he was one of the founding members of the Southern Christian Coalition, which kind of echoes back to a time in Germany when Dietrich Bonhoeffer, I'm just playing this out in my head, Dietrich Bonhoeffer started the Confirming Church. Am I saying that right? Now I got to go look it up. Does anybody know? Somebody out there knows. confessing. Yeah, sorry, I said confirming. So he was a central leader in the confessing church, and this was a movement of German pastors to resist the mustache man, because there were other Christians who were bending the knee and happy to do it. Does any of that sound familiar? Can anybody see the lines here that are drawn? And then you go up to the 50s and 60s and you see Dr. Martin Luther King taking his Christian values and creating the Southern Christian Coalition, while down the street, the men in the white robes found home in the Southern Baptist Church. Now, you've got to remember the roots of the Southern Baptist Church go back to the Civil War. Why was it started? Somebody knows the answer to that. History always informs you on why we're where we are, and why, after the Civil War, the Southern voters had way too much influence on what restoration was going to look like in this country. Restructuring was going to look like. And because you had then people who were sympathetic to them, like, well, we don't need to kick them when they're down, they had way too much. They were able to undo some of those rights. And then you start to see a movement that happens. But everywhere along the way, you end up where a space where Christianity rubs up against itself and people break away and say, well, I see myself here and others see themselves here, and you got to take a side. You can no longer pretend like, oh, I don't get in politics. I don't do those things. You cannot you cannot pretend to be something that you're not. Just a nice Christian that bats her eyes and says she just loves Jesus. And we are certainly at that point now. And you saw that shock wave go through Christianity at the unaliving of Charlie Kirk, right? How many of us said, I cannot believe how many people I still had around me that believed that. They never had to show themselves. They never had to reveal themselves instead of that moment. Hi, Sue Ellen. Glad you're here. Chauffeur says, I'm thankful I didn't grow up in the church. I don't need someone to tell me to be good and kind. Good for you. What's your take in the Purple Revolution? So I'm going to be honest, I don't know much about it. I caught Tabitha Speaks Politics, and thank you. I see the hearts memes, and thank you. I hear that those are important here. I so appreciate you. The lives, the shares of the lives, the likes, all that good stuff. Thank you so much. Keep that going. So I don't know much about it. I heard Tabitha Speaks Politics speaking about it this morning. I thought that was very interesting, but I tried to do a deep dive into it, and I'm seeing that there's a lot of different things happening about it. So right now I can't speak on it. I'm going to be honest. I don't spend as much time on social media these days as I used to. I used to spend a lot of time making sure I understand how what's happening and how things are going, and I just haven't had time. So by the time I look at some of the news articles that I read and some of the people that I read on Substack, I don't have time. And I think that's really a movement that's kind of taken off here on TikTok, I think. Is that what I hear? Hey, Poet Miranda, it's good to see you. So I'm a little behind. If you all have some people that I should follow or go reference. Yeah, Ellie Mae, I think that's what you're, it is distracting. Try not to get too distracted, and remember, self-care is very, very important. I know that's hard to do. Self-care is very, very important. And sometimes people will say, that it's impossible, especially for people with young children, especially people who have to work. Their livelihood depends on them to be involved with people who are just diehard Trumpers. I get all that. But if there is a way that you can just take a moment and literally touch grass, or sit underneath a tree, or sit on a park bench and watch the squirrels as they try to hurry up and get ready for winter, whatever you can do, please just take a breath and know that you are not alone. The absolute worst thing that we can do right now is to become paralyzed with fear. That is what they want. When Kevin Roberts said that it will be a bloodless revolution if the left allows it, that's exactly what he was talking about. They were hoping to move so lightning fast that we would be confused and absolutely immobilized because we would be in shock. Thank you, Lisa Miles. I think. Sorry, it's hard for me to see these. I need new glasses. I've heard about her. Lynette, can you grab that? I don't know where my pencil and paper is. I'm always so prepared here. Da Views on YT says, I had to drop back from everything just to survive mentally. Also, I will not be traveling for holidays with red hats again this winter. I am mentally exhausted. And poor AF. Da Views, I understand. I think there's going, this will be, hi Salt's mom. I just reread a DM from you today and you were on my mind. I'm so glad you're here. Oh, good. And you're still a mod. You're welcome. Every once in a while we get a troll in. I know between you and Lynette, you'll take care of people. But I think this year you're going to start to see a big difference in how people interact with and tolerate bigots. I mean, that there's no other thing to call them, but just people who are doubling down on their bigotry. And why in God's name would you want to spend time with people like that? And I'm not judging people who will. Everybody's got to come up with their values and their boundaries. And no one can judge you for that. But I do think that the holidays will look a lot different. I also think I would expect there'll be a call for boycotting around the holiday season, or how we spend our money and things like that. I think there will be some massive movement that will help people focus their energy in a tangible way. Because we also have to remember that there are a lot of corporations right now who are betraying us. A lot of people who are showing up, contributing to the ballroom, obeying in advance, including this app. I mean, I've got almost 800,000 followers and I've got 87 people in here. And I love you all, but come on. Come on. Why is that happening? Most of the time, I won't get a video over 20,000 views. And, somebody will say, well, that's a lot. But again, keep it in perspective on where I've been. But they are absolutely obeying in advance, 100% obeying in advance. So I'm just going to keep coming here, and I'm just going to keep coming here and doing my best, and hopefully we'll get more people. But if you can share it and push it out and bring people in, that certainly will help. We did, I think one day last week we got up to 300, which I thought was pretty cool. There were times where we would get up to 1,000 before before Trump started to negotiate with TikTok, and they pretended that they went dark, and thanks to President Trump, they were able to bring it back on. Like, oh my gosh, you all, do you think we're stupid? Do you think we're 5 years old and we can't figure this out? And for those of you who don't know, please be sure to follow me elsewhere when this goes over. And that's probably why they're suppressing, because I speak candidly about this. When they go over to, when this changes to Truth Social 2.0, I'm not staying. No, I did not. Whoa, wheat. Did you hear about the LGBT conversion therapy case coming? No, I'll have to look for that. I don't know anything about it. So thank you. Again, I'm not doing a lot here when it comes to, if it's here or something like that. I don't stay here a lot. Yes, Amy, I am. I'm actually live streaming, and these lives go over there. They're recorded and they go over there, the entire live, even all my mistakes and ughs and ums and stuff like that. Yeah, Sin Blossoms, I don't blame you. Yeah. Hi, yes, I'm glad you're here. Yeah, Ken, you can leave too. Goodbye. Love you. What's this? This is really weird. I'm having trouble seeing all of your. I'm going to take that down. Hold on. Okay, so it's going to the Supreme Court about conversion therapy to take place in Colorado. Okay, I'll be paying attention. Thank you. Who said that? Miss you in my FYP. Yeah, I hardly ever get there. Thank you, Salt's mom. I hope to be here. Cross fingers, knock on wood. I hope to be here quite often, especially as to see whatever this happens. Whatever happens with this app, I'm just going to use it, especially as a little bit of a thank you. We've been here now going on almost 6 years, and it's been fun. It's been fun until it wasn't. And you know, the changes have been so crazy. I'm almost ready to just ask TikTok to just let the governor off of our accounts just for a little bit. But I think they've already agreed to throttle a lot of the creators' accounts whose voices were too loud during the election and things like that. So I think that's what's happening. I think that's what's happening here. Hi, Seven. It's good to see you. Have I missed any questions? I'm going to go, let's see. Looks like I'm back. Okay, good. Any questions? I wanted to remind you that, let's see, for those of you who don't know, I'm a writer too. I have my book, Deconstructing. It is now available. It is available in the TikTok shop if you want a signed copy. It's also available where all books are sold. And then I also write over on Substack. And this past Sunday, I wrote about women who bend the arc. Because with the passing of Jane Goodall, I started thinking about women in history. But I also started thinking about, I cannot get out of my mind the story of Madge Oberholzer. How many of you know the story of Madge? Oh, thank you, Salt's mom. I'm so glad you got it. How many of you know the story of Madge Oberholzer? My goodness, Oberholzer. I'm butchering her name. Anybody know her name? Anybody know who she is? I'm going to give you a hint. And I know I've talked about this book before. Timothy Egan, A Fever in the Heartland. Stephanie Warren, a strong-willed child here on TikTok, recommended this to me. I don't remember. I couldn't put it down. I'm actually getting ready to read it again. Because what this book, if I realized how close in the 20s we came to being run by the men in white sheets. I mean, out loud and proud men in white sheets. So it tells the story, and it tells the story of the resurgence of that group in Indiana. So there was a connection there for me since I live here, and but we also understand the thread of racism and bigotry that's still here. There are still in existence in Indiana sundown towns. And it was very, very prevalent during when my daughter was in college. There's some horror stories that we have related to this. But this tells the story of D.C. Stevenson. And he was considered the kingmaker at the time. He was one of the most influential in that group of white men in the white sheets. And how close he came to becoming the president. And it was because of one woman's testimony against him. In her words, on her deathbed, sharing what he did to her. And it took her at that time, especially because that stuff was just pushed behind doors. You didn't talk about abuse. You didn't talk about assaults. You just didn't do it. And she wanted to make sure that she got her story out. And people found it so horrific because finally someone had the courage to say it, and he lost everything, and then everything started to shrink back into the shadows. The sheets got put back in the closets, and there is so much connection. So I talk about the women who bend the arc, and I'm talking about the arc of the moral universe that says it bends towards justice, and Obama used that in one of his inauguration speeches. He had it woven into a rug. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. used it in some of his speeches, but it's actually attributed, I believe, to a theologian from many years ago. And it's not just about it bending on its own. It's the people who grab it and bend it. So things might take a while, and that trajectory might take a while, but it is always bending towards justice when we bend it. So starting with Madge, I saw this arc, and I get so excited when I see something like this in my mind, and I just want to sit down and write it. And it's certainly not all exclusive of women in history who have shaped history and bent that arc. Because my goodness, we could even go back to Joan of Arc. We could go back to Harriet Tubman. We could go back to so many different places. And I often thought maybe this will become a series. But I included in this story Margaret Chase Smith, because how many of you remember, or maybe none of us do, McCarthyism? So that was a big thing. Have you no conscience? The man who got up to say that to McCarthyism and started his downfall actually came after Margaret Chase Smith had the nerve and the courage to stand up, and she gave a speech called, I believe it was called the Voice of Conscience. She never mentioned his name, but everybody knew who she was talking about. And she paid for it. Immediately she was stripped of all her committee assignments, and she was basically blackballed, but it created a movement. And then I talk about Shirley Chisholm being the first black woman elected to Congress, and then she also ran for president. She knew she didn't have a chance, but she was a disruptor. And she took the unaliving threats. She knew what was going to happen to her. But she said, I have to do this now for those who come after me. It's that kind of courage, that moments when you're standing and you're looking with history to your back and you're looking towards the future and say, I have a gift that I'm going to do now. And if I use that, someone's life down the lane will change. Someone will be impacted because I chose not to be silenced. And then I bring that up to Ocasio-Cortez, Jasmine Crockett, and Kamala Harris, and how in this moment, especially with Kamala, when people talk about her being underqualified and inexperienced, and you're looking at a man who has had 6 bankruptcies, who's a criminal, and are the people who also say, I couldn't stand her laugh, and not understanding how internalized their misogyny is, and how loyal they are to a patriarchy that they pretend that they've broken away from. And you got people, the only way that happened, if you do the math, are people who, if the votes are true, people who pretended support didn't vote for her because of that ingrained prejudice. But she did it. She stepped up. I have her book here. I haven't read it yet. Yeah, just here for the show, U.S. is on the road to become his 7th bankruptcy. And for him to get up and lie like he is right now about what's happening with the government shutdown and his speech. How many of you watched his speech with the assembly of military generals and leaders? It wasn't just unhinged. That was the ramblings of a madman. Someone who's, people, you can say it's dementia or insanity or both. Yeah, lady, it was bad, Misty. It was. And can't stand to listen to his voice. I have a story about that. Yeah, it was bad. W's over on YT says, notice not a single man spoke up with the same fervor. It took a woman to raise her voice. She was the Lady Godiva of her time. I'm not sure. I don't know when that came in, but I bet it was about one of those women of history. So anyway, go read The Women Who Bent the Ark, because I think it's really important to, especially when we look at how much one person's voice, one movement, one person stepping into courage. And, I know that there are men as well. One of my life's heroes is Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And I've already talked about him once. But thinking about the courage and knowing that a month before his extermination in a camp, the war ended. But what he fought for and what he conspired to do as a pastor to stop fascism took courage, and he used his faith to do that. And it's moments like this where we say, what am I being called to do? And social media, I'm going to say this, social media can be our worst enemy. I know that many of you can't get up here and do what I'm doing, even though I don't think I do it very well. I'm doing what I can. And this is to educate you and to ignite you and to remind you that when we give up hope, that's when we lose. That we need to history needs to inform us and remind us that there have been some really, really horrible times in our history that we have gotten through when people grabbed the arc of justice and bent it towards kindness and compassion and said, we are not going to let tyrants run us. We're not going to let fascists take over our lives. So you can find your place, but it has to be more than just sharing on social media. I've often thought about, just sharing other people's content. I know you're doing your part, and I don't mean to convict anybody out there who is, that's what you do. Lynette, if you pinned something, I didn't see it. That's what you do. But there is going to be an opportunity for you to use your unique gifts. And one of the things I thought about today, and y'all tell me what you think. I feel like there's so much information coming at you. Like even when I was on Substack this morning, I think I ended up saving like 20 videos. There's no way I'm going to be able to go back and watch all that. It's like saturation overload. There's no way I can do that and still stay up with my life, still balance the things I'm trying to take care of. And hopefully what I need to see will rise to the top. But I feel like we need cheat sheets. We need something where you can take powerful talking points. And I think that's what Caroline Leavitt does. I think that's what Fox News does all day long. They just vomit talking points. And they're very sharp and powerful. So you get people like John Wallago who says, the Democrats did this. The Democrats are to blame. Obama is to blame, for God's sake. Obama hasn't been in power since 2015. And these ignorant people indoctrinated into this ideology, because it's not belief. This is not anything about theology. This is an ideology. This is fascism 101. And they are doubling down on it. No more than the Christians in Germany could see that they were doubling down on it. They cannot see that they've chosen the side where they think it's okay to raid a building at night and zip tie children together. How is that ever going to be the right side of history? That it's okay to ban books from people telling their story, Black and brown creators, the LGBTQIA plus community, people who have been harmed by this very system. They don't want those stories to get out because they want to continue to perpetuate the oppression, because that serves Christian patriarchy. They can't see that any more than the Christians did that bent the knee to the mustache man. They can't see it. That's why we've come to a point where there's going to have to be making sure that when like people like John who wants to come in here and say Obama is caused my health insurance to go up, or whoever it was, we can't, there's no reason to debate that. There's no debating that. But you have someone in your life. You have someone in your life who you can talk to, who's starting to put these things together and say, this isn't making sense. I don't want to be a part of this level of cruelty. People who realize that you hear the talking points. You heard Trump say, what a great opportunity the Democrats gave me, and now I cannot annihilate these programs. He thinks that's actually a good thing, and that might be enough to wake somebody up and go, wait a minute, what do you mean, what programs? You mean the one that my uncle's on, the breathing machine that he's on? Hold on, I gotta show that I'm still here. There, I had to do a puzzle piece. Okay, Sue Ellen, we'll be on the lookout for it, okay? DM me. Thank you, Moon Sky. So the important thing is that when you can have those conversations, have them, if you can do it safely. If the other thing that you should be looking at, and this is something that we do not talk enough about, is how are you protecting your family, your loved ones, in case there are disruptions in the system. Now, people will often say, "Oh, you're being a nihilist," or you go immediately to disaster. The only thing I say to that is, I've been talking about Christian nationalism here on this platform since 2020, and I want you to show me where I've been wrong. I had Christians come to me when the first video I made that told me not to talk about it because I was overreacting. But that's not what was going to happen. And I was giving Christianity a bad name. And I'm not saying that to say I told you so, but I can look down the line because I'm a realist. And a realist looks at things different, to say, to be cautious, to be prepared, to be safe, we should make sure that these things are happening. So if I were a true prepper, you wouldn't even be seeing me right now. I wouldn't be here. But do I have some things stored up? Yes, I do. Because I think the one thing that concerned me, hey sis, I'm glad you're here. Yes, Mary, Kate, whatever is going in your life, I send you love. I pray for your healing. Just know that we all see you here. If everybody can send some love to Mary, Kate, we would do that. So where was I? Because I get distracted. I think it's important. I think especially for me, I go back to 2015, and I think about when Mike Pence tried to pass the Religious Freedom Act here in Indiana. And the reason why it didn't get passed in the form that he wanted, which basically would give any Christian the right to discriminate against any person for any reason. It was one of the most ridiculous acts to ever be passed, but it put him on the radar of Trump. And I saw that. I knew that was going to be happening because you could see what was happening with the language and the rhetoric that Trump was doing. So I knew that eventually that kind of legislation would be passed a lot around the country. And since then, several states have, and I can't say what they are because I never keep that information in my head. I'd have to go look somewhere. But when Trump was embarrassed in front of the military leaders, he really thought that was going to be a rally. Like, one hand up in the air like the Musk salute that he did on Inauguration Day. He really thought it was going to be that. You could see how embarrassed he was. You could see that he thought that this was going to be his moment to shine, with the rest of us would just be ready to just lock our doors, close our blinds, and be terrified about what's going to happen. But that is not what he got. But what concerns me now is he's not going to stop. Stephen Miller is not going to stop. Russell Vogt, or whatever, he's not going to stop. He's already been caught on tape prior to the election saying that Trump was behind this. And Russell Vogt and Stephen Miller are two of the most threatening men to our democracy, to our way of life. They'll stop at nothing. Again, go back and watch Stephen Miller at the Charlie Kirk propaganda rally. You will see what I mean. That was nothing more than to once again ignite the base and basically say, get ready for what we're getting ready to do. And you look at some of the signals he has sent. When he said, Stephen Miller said, we are coming after your money. And that was related to people who oppose the Trump regime. They are hoping to use the same kind of tactics that was used in other world wars to annihilate the threats of resistance. So the first thing you do is disrupt the systems that people rely on for heat, for transportation, and water. So in as much as you can, if that means having conversations with your family, if that means that you need to prepare a go bag, if you have people who are talented in one way and you are in another and you come together as a pod. I've heard people creating those kinds of situations so you know who's going to take care of the water, who's got resources to get dehydrated food, to get some freeze-dried food, who can make sure that you have insulated blankets, ways to create an alternative heat source. And just start to put that in a closet or a room. If you don't need it, just like we prepare for during tornado season, I get my big crate out in case something happens and I have to throw my reactive dog in it, who I know I would lose if a tornado. We're in Tornado Alley. We just had one go through that annihilated many houses back in the spring. These things can happen. These are insurance. So if we're wrong, yippee. But if we're not, we're ready. And the less we have to stand in some line waiting for someone to hand us out, the better we can be prepared to stay strong and resist fascism. So we want to make sure that we continue to stay focused. We're not giving up. No one's giving up hope. Maybe none of this will happen. But tell me what's happened in the past 10 months that we didn't predict was going to happen if Project 2025 was put into place. So those of us who were warning about that, we saw this coming. And Trump is like the most ridiculously, I don't like to use these kinds of words with people, but he's not very smart. And he has, as long as the cameras are on him, he's just going to vomit his every knowledge that he has, because he loves the shock, and he loves the attention, and he thinks if the reporters are sitting there writing copious notes, he thinks he's one of the smartest people in the room, when the entire world's looking at this man and thinking this is the ramblings of a madman. But the one thing he does is give you hints of what he's planning. And these are the things that he has said. So why wouldn't we be prepared? Why wouldn't we say, what's going to be plan B if these things happen? While we continue to educate ourselves, look for ways that we can contribute to a resistance movement, educate ourselves on what's happening with politics, because I'm not I'm not an nihilist. I don't think this is not the point where we can say we're going to completely destroy our government way of our system of government. We need Democrats in there, the Democratic Party, to be strong and resilient. I don't agree with a lot of things they do. There are Democrats who voted for October 14th to be a Charlie Kirk Day. Rest assured, I will be doing a video on that day. And rest assured, I will be calling those people out. That is the most insulting thing you can do. And anybody who says to me that, well, he had the courage of his conviction. Well, guess who else had the courage of his conviction and started World War II? That's insane to say that. That you can only say that from a place of privilege. Anybody who says that about Charlie Kirk is sitting so high on the structure of Christian patriarchy that they can look down and go, well, doesn't affect me. I'm good. I can just tell. Look at that. Look at him preach. He's so smart. He's really passionate. He goes all over the country. He's making millions of dollars for what he did. And I'm sorry, what 30-something goes to college campuses to debate kids whose frontal cortex isn't even completely developed? No wonder he looked like a genius, when truly all he did was spew hate. And please do not tell me about how much his things were taken out of context. Do you know what I did? I actually sat down and listened to hours of Charlie Kirk. To really see, has his stuff been taken out of context? Because that's what they know. That you again, we're going to protect Christian patriarchy, and that language works for the Bible, so let's apply it to Charlie Kirk. Don't even get me started on Erica. Don't even get me started on Caroline, who literally said in May that we're going to look at the systems of education, because you know what we really need? We need more electricians. We need more servants. We need people who are plumbers. While this woman gets up there, spews lies based on her education and experience, she got that job. What they literally will say to your face is, I don't want to be an electrician. I don't want to be a server. I don't want to be a plumber. I want that for your family. And MAGA still believes that we're just talking about Democrats. MAGA cannot see that this is about everyone. And when I get really, really angry, I say, let it happen. Let it burn. Let them see what's going to happen when Social Security is cut so deeply that their grandmothers will not have a place to live. Let them see it. But you know why I won't stop talking and warning people and telling you to get ready and find the places where you can be of value in resisting this? Is because of the children. And the children's children, because to undo this is going to take years. And what else do I have to do? I just watched Jane Goodall die at 91. And in one of her videos, I don't know if I have it pulled up, in one of her, not on the one that's on Netflix, but in another one, she said, I'm just going to keep doing good for as long as I can. They said, are you going to retire? Like, do you ever feel like going to Florida and putting your feet up and having a pina colada? She goes, oh, goodness, no. I'm just going to keep doing the good for as long as I can. And that is a mantra. You have 30 years. All right, Mary Beth, I'm going to bring you along with me. That's my sister. That is a mantra. I wouldn't be worrying about that. Sometimes I feel like it's euphoric to be driving down the road and thinking, wow, this feels normal. We're listening to music or going to a soccer game or something like that, but really nothing's normal. Nothing's normal, because it's not just Trump, it's Russell Vought, it's Peter Thiel, it's Palantir. It's the things that they're trying to put in place, because industrial revolution like brutality is what they want. Not only, we're not talking about the good old days when A white man could walk down the street and ask anybody, what are you doing? What are you doing here? And anybody had to respond to him. No, we're going back farther. We're going back farther. That's where they want to take us. So we're fighting for the future. And there does come a time where you have to stop trying to talk to people to change their mind and start talking to only the people who are trying to make sure that these people will never be in power again. We made mistakes along the way. And you know why they were made? Because every place where we had the chance to annihilate white supremacy, white Christian patriarchy, we didn't. They were in the room. They were at the table. Along with people who didn't thought, well, we don't have to embarrass them. Let's give them their vote. Let's give them their land back. Let's do the things so that that we're here at a day where people still idolize and romanticize a Confederate flag. That was just used for a few years. How do we get there? How did we get there? Because it was tolerated. And tolerance is one of the most caustic, toxic, human concepts because of what is allowed to be in the room. This isn't about getting along. This is about, once and for all, to create a system where not only is the accountability different, like I said earlier, we're literally at a place where military don't know how they're going to pay their light bill, and Congress is sitting at home getting paid. And while I agree that I don't want those tax cuts to be taken away so that people can afford their health insurance, I don't think Congress should be getting paid during this. I don't think that the air traffic controllers, they should be getting paid right now. It's all backwards in how we allowed those things to happen, because we always get to a place where we're comfortable. We get to a place where we want to believe that our elected officials have our best interest at heart. And since the 50s, Christian nationalism had a plan to change this. It's been growing right underneath our noses. And it really started to escalate with Reagan and McConnell. And we cannot allow that to happen again. There's a disparity in the number of white men that are part of our government. We should demand a more representative of the demographics of this country, including the number of Christians that are in government. So yes, will that take time? Yes. Again, I'm not an annihilist. I don't want to see us completely tear the structure down, but I do believe after a time like this, it's time to look at how things can be fixed so this can never happen again. It can never happen again. I gotta take a drink. What have I missed? Hi, Tala. I totally agree. We need more accurate representation. Yes, I'm looking over at YT to see if I have any. Whew. Hi, Rev Rosie. It's good to see you. How you doing? Misty, right. Appeasement politics. Yeah, there's just been a couple of things where I've been really frustrated. Now, I always am cautioned to say that where whoever the Democratic candidate is, I'm voting. But yeah, we got to expect some different accountability, 100%. Thank you, Seth. That's very kind of you. Your ministry is important. Thank you. I'm not going to go back too far into these. Hi, Chris Paul. I still have your book in my DMs. I'm sorry. I will get to it, I promise. What you were doing is very important work. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you, Mel Mary Kate. You're very, very kind. I'm not going to go too far in the comments, Lynette. If there's one I missed that you pinned, let me know. I am going to start wrapping this up. If there's anybody who has a question. Hi, Bob Chicago. I haven't seen you in a while either, friend. It's good to see you. I just went on a rant, so I'm not even quite sure what I said. It'll probably get clipped and put here. Lynette, remind me of a message I got from TikTok that I want to tell you about. So, any comments, any questions, anything that y'all want to talk about? I can't see here. Where are we? Yeah. Messages from TikTok. Oh, Lynette's typing. I can see her over here. Who is Kaj? I don't know. Am I supposed to know Kaj, Sue Ellen? Congress and Senate shouldn't be paid. Absolutely, Wendy. I agree 100%. Salt's Mom, I'm hoping to be here more. I knock on wood. I hope to be here more. I'd like to get really predictable on what my time is, but that means I have to get my act together. I'm not real good at that right now. Even though this is going to shock somebody when I say my tarot reader said I really need to get my act together. Good luck with that. I know, right? You know what I find oftentimes what I do, and I guess this is a good thing in a way, but not. Thank you for the follow hugs. I will read a story and then immediately be inspired and take off down a rabbit hole and see how this applies to where we are and look at history. And then 90 minutes later, I'm not dressed. I'm still in my PJs. My dog hasn't gone out. He hasn't been fed. My feral cat's at the door going like, woman, what are you doing? It is an hour and I'm not happy. I don't like you anyway. I hate that I rely on you. Where's my food so I can get back out there? Kaj, he just tried to contact me. I don't know the username. You are me. Yeah. Did you get? No, it's not that one. She was not. One of my ferals went missing and I haven't found her. I thought we found her at the shelter, but it wasn't her. So, we know a feral, their average life is between 3 and 5 years. And I've had her for about 2. Wendy, I've been voting to get McConnell out for the last 16 years. Yes, Reagan was the beginning. So, Wendy, I did see that Amy McGrath, is it Amy, just announced her candidacy again for that spot. McConnell, somebody's wheeling him in and moving his mouth by remote. That is, and McConnell is agreed to provide the I can't ever say this, judiciary system. He said, y'all take care of this stuff. I'm going to take care of the judges. So you started to see that, and you see it really, really blatantly when he refused to bring to vote one of Obama's nomination for the Supreme Court, because I believe it was like in March. And he said that was too close to the election. And meanwhile, he's running Amy Coney Barrett in to be nominated weeks before an election. A complete hypocrite. And now I know that often can happen on both sides, but that was glaring, absolutely glaring. And it is completely horrific that the worst president in our country's history chose so many of our Supreme Court. And we don't talk enough about how dangerous they are. Oh, yes, that's true, Sue Ellen. Blocked. Thank you. That is very fishy. As a matter of fact, I just had I was on another live and I heard someone say that it's now very common that the people who use my profile will message you during a live and say that I'm offering you a private session, and that none of that's true. I know I have several scam accounts who are out here. We can't get rid of them. We cannot. And if I say their names, I'll get a violation. Because I think I don't even think TikTok cares anymore, and it's impossible to report them. I have to prove more about who I am and the owner of my name versus them. I need to get some things protected and trademarked. Mel says, I live in Kentucky. McConnell needed to go a long time ago. Yeah, in the 80s, before he ever got started. So DJT seems to be bothering you. Your opinion, not mine, nor family. I have no idea what that means. Talk higher than a sixth grader. I get 6 or 10 scammers a day. Liz, yeah, it's really bad. It's really concerning how much they don't even try to stop them now. So we'll see what happens. Now, I did want to remind you, my latest blog is up, The Women Who Bent the Ark. I did also write about Jane Goodall and how her kindness contrasts against the cruelty of Christian niceness. If you want to go see that, you can find them over on Substack. And thank you, Lynette. You gave me some sections from one of the blogs. It says, patriarchy has never known what to do with a woman who is no longer afraid. And that's when earlier I talked about Ken Ham, the author of, or the creator of Answers in Genesis and the Creation Museum, where they have dinosaurs walking with men and women and all that good stuff. That's certainly what you're seeing right now, because Christians are so afraid that the love for Jane Goodall is creating a distraction for Christians who might actually have sympathy for her. And the last, empathy, sympathy, compassion, all of those terrify Christian patriarchy because it takes their eyes off this concept of suffering being your highest order of nobility to look towards heaven. And the more we suffer, the greater our reward would be. The more we give, the more we prioritize the church's needs over our families. I've heard horror stories from people where they literally take out a loan to tithe and can't put food on the table because they believe so much in this. Their basket will be overflowing if they give. Prosperity gospel is one of the most toxic, dangerous gospels ever. Any preacher who is preaching that nonsense needs to be called out, 100%. It is only to your detriment if you are sitting in a church that's preaching the prosperity gospel. Prosperity gospel says that the more you give away, primarily to the church, because they will tell you that what you give to other nonprofits doesn't count. Only what you give to the church counts as a tithe, as your tithe to God. And tithe is always 1/10 of your income. And there's different categories of tithing that they'll also talk about. It's complete nonsense. It's all nonsense. Amy says that at that Creation Museum, a lady gave evidence of how the science timeline is wrong. It's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. I can understand why people take it just because the dinosaurs. Yeah, Lily, 100% they're grifters. Big grifters, big time. And there's also one last rant, and then I'm going to call it a day. And I'm going to bring this up time and again. My biggest complaint, besides of prosperity gospel, is the fact that a church can run a nonprofit under their 501c3. So churches aren't required to file a Form 990 each year. Every other kind of nonprofit has to file a Form 990, which the IRS, then you have to disclose how much money you received and then how you use those funds. That becomes public knowledge. So you can go out to places like GuideStar, Charity Navigator, and you can evaluate. And all worthy nonprofits want to try to get a high rating from one of those nonprofit watch organizations. But if you are a church, you are not required to fill out a 990. You do not have to say how much money you give and get and what you do with that money. So they can run a campaign that they're going to send money on missions, and they'll have a campaign for that. they'll never tell you how much of that money actually went to missions. That's why I also have problems with missions. I'll save that for another day. And they don't have to report it. You start to think that when somebody like Kenneth Copeland with a $300 million ministry, something else is happening with that money besides just giving it to the poor and the needy. So then what ends up happening is a lot of these churches are now running businesses. So here locally, there's one that runs what they're calling a clothing ministry. Another one who runs a place where people can come and they have indoor activities and things like that. I want to be careful because I know there's some people in here from my town, and those are noble. Those are wonderful concepts, but they aren't required by the IRS to show how much of the money that they actually take in. And then they can say that they're putting it towards that business, or how much when people give things on behalf of that business that aren't part of the church, they're not required to show. You can't go ask for their $9.90 on how they're doing that. There will be no place on their website where you can go find a link, which a lot of times if a nonprofit is really happy with their nonprofit designation through GuideStar or Charity Navigator, they'll have a link on their website so you can actually go pick up their latest $9.90. And they'll go back several years. So that is completely unfair. That is an advantage that churches have inside this nonprofit sector that makes them more competitive to the nonprofits that the nonprofits then cannot compete with. There's no way that you can, when you have to show what you did with those donations, and then you're going to get graded on that, and then people are going to give you money based on your grade. Like, how are you using those funds in relationship to the mission that you have for your organization? So for me, as a founder of a spay-neuter clinic, you have to show that payroll is justified based on how much donations you got. They don't have to do that. So they're doing these very noble nonprofits, but they can get as much money as you want. Recently, one of them said, "Oh, I don't know how we got this $20,000 electricity bill. We have to ask the county, the city, and the public to help us with this," which they raised in hours, but they could have raised $100,000. Nobody knows. They just say, "Oh, thank you, we raised it," but you don't know how much they actually raised. Then they can do whatever the hell they want with that money. A nonprofit that's under the legislation of the IRS that says, no, you have to then show what you do with that money, but a church can do whatever they want. The preacher can go out and buy a new Cadillac, and nobody can do anything about it. People don't understand how corrupt the system is inside America that protects churches. The people do not understand how unfair that now is with the nonprofits sector. So, bringing this again, like I always say, I try to bring history to today. And you have people, let's just talk about USAID. So USAID, the one thing that USAID did was give you a monitoring arm over the funds that were going to some of those nonprofits, some of them run by Christian organizations, okay? So follow me on this. They then, in order to continue to get that money, had to report back to USAID what they did with that, because it's a government organization. So there was some oversight on that money. And so while I have problems with some missions, if you're going to do something, if you can do it through some kind of government organization, that at least provides some kind of oversight where those monies can't go out into the Lutheran church proper and not be monitored. They might do it once, they're never going to do it again because they can't count for that money. Now that money has been stripped away and these nonprofits are freaked out. They actually went to Trump. They went to the Trump administration and said, what are we going to do here? We can't match these funds. And a lot of them, including like in the state of Indiana, where Braun is stripping the same kinds of funds from kids to get food during the school day, they say, turn to the churches, turn to the nonprofits. They can take over what we no longer want to do. Where do you see the problem in that? First of all, there's no way, there's no oversight. Now, will there still be some reputable organizations who will do the right thing, monitor their money, show the receipts, because they're used to operating that way? But will there be somebody like a Jerry Falwell Jr. who'll see this as an opportunity to rake in millions and send out 10,000 and pretend like he's doing something to help the organization and not have a problem sleeping at night? Because on that side of on the Caroline Leavitt side of Christianity, you can stand up and lie all you want. It doesn't matter. The world's going to burn anyway. Jesus is going to return. He's proud of me, because apparently Jesus is proud of lying Christians. You can do whatever you want. You can say whatever you want. You can do whatever, because if you aren't saved, then they can treat you however you want. Again, Dominionism. Dominionism isn't just about animals and the finite resources of the earth. It's about how you treat your fellow human. So what do you think's getting ready to happen when these churches figure out that they can say they're sending money to Rwanda? Exactly. And they won't have to account for a dime. And that is the system of government that we have. And that's exactly the kind of thing when we talk about Congress getting paid, airline traffic controllers not getting paid, the military not getting paid, these or the 20 Democrats who voted for the Charlie Kirk Day. These are the kinds of things that we have to remember and not fall back asleep. Like Rumi says, the breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Do not fall back asleep. The portal is wide, going back and forth. You can interpret that however you want, but for me, it's about awakening to the human need and the suffering and creation and our responsibility for it. We can never assume that someone that will always turn towards greed. They have to be accountable to the people, and we have to remind them of that. But I'm very concerned about what's getting ready to happen with this. You watch what they do. Watch TBM or whatever the TBN, wherever they are. I guarantee you they're already advertising how they're going to feed people, how they're going to take care of people when they're absolutely not. They're going to rake in the money. They're going to take it for themselves, throw a few $1,000s to it, get there for optics, get their pictures. And this is just another money-making scheme. And it's horrific. Alarm says, unfortunately, love thy neighbor seems to be only what English speak. I didn't see the rest of that, sorry. What are your thoughts on people trying to celebrate and rectify billionaires by talking about how generous they are? Well, yeah, I mean, I think Mackenzie Scott is probably a good example of that. She does seem to be doing some good. Taylor Swift, we talked about her the other day. But ballpoint, come back. I've been on now for an hour and 40 minutes, and I don't know how these people do it for 6 hours. I'm just not there, but I'm not good at drinking water. You know what? We got to have guests. That will help. That will give me a break. Thank you so much, you all. Now, I have done something, and you all might not like this, but I'm going to do it anyway. W's. Also, these nonprofits can now demand obedience in order to receive any assistance. W's. Thank you for that. I forgot about that. Just what I was talking about with the government removing any kind of oversight and funding of these and letting these nonprofits come in, mostly run by churches who have zero oversight, including how they spend their money. They can say, well, do you go to our church? Are you a Christian? Absolutely. It's coming. I 100% agree with that. I have done something This is how we're going to end. But I wrote something. I was inspired the other day, and I felt like we talk a lot about really, really intense things here. And we have to. To me, one of the things a therapist said to me a long time ago is, the monster's not as big when you get the words out. And then you realize how much power you have over whatever's happening. And the other thing I think, like I've always said, is history informs us, and it also it warns us, it informs us, but it also empowers and inspires us, because people have done really hard things in the past, and we're stronger. We're more informed. We have more resources. We have more ways to be together than any time in history. We have to be efficient about the way we do it, and we have to do this with our eyes wide open. So I feel like every day I want to leave you with a little inspiration. So I'm going to read something that I wrote, and if you like it, let me know. If you think it's awful, or if it didn't do anything for you, I can come up with something else, or we just won't end with any kind of blessing, if you will. But that's who I am, and that's how I want to end this. So as we wrap up today, remember that deconstructing isn't just about leaving behind what no longer serves you. It's about the brave work of untangling your mind from what you were taught, so you can live into your truest self. So every time you question, every time you choose compassion over fear, you are becoming part of the healing this world so desperately needs. Change doesn't only happen in big moments. It happens in the daily choices of ordinary people committed to living with courage and integrity. If this resonates with you, be sure to follow me so that we can continue these conversations. And now, a blessing until the next time we meet. May you carry peace in the places of chaos. May you carry courage in the places of fear. May you carry love into the places that feel forgotten. And may you have the strength to become the advocate you are preparing yourself to be, lending your voice and your resources where you can. Go gently, go boldly, and please know you're not alone. And don't ever, ever give up hope. Don't ever give up hope. Okay, beautiful souls, thank you so much for being here. I'm honored to be in this space with you. I get as much out of this as I hope I give to you. Much love. I hope to be back here tomorrow. Bye for now. Okay, YouTube.